to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. Today, the video going to be a further review of Celtic at the moment, a throwback to the Hibs draw 0-0 at the weekend, which was a very disappointing performance, and an early first look at our game against St Mirren on Wednesday. Before we crack on with the video, please do consider clicking the subscribe button, get the subscriber numbers slowly rolling up and up. Click the like button as well, try and boost the analytics for these videos, and also please, if you can, pass on the details of the channel to other Celtic fans and friends, colleagues, etc. All free of charge, no compulsion or obligation, but so clicking the subscribe button and the like button does help my channel succeed and flourish and get things spread to more and more people to share Celtic fan opinions. Now, I had a further review of all the highlights and pundits' opinions and reviewing various different Celtic fan sites, YouTube channels, etc. There do seem to be a couple of different schools of thought regarding Celtic's game against Hibs at the weekend, which was a very disappointing, lifeless, tired, mentally and physically fatigued performance. A lot of Celtic star players just didn't turn up. Several, such as Kyogo, Maeda, O'Reilly, all said to look rather tired, according to people who watched the whole game live and people at the game, and also the opinion of many journalists and online vloggers and podcasters, etc. Some people saying that Brendan Rodgers did a great job and that it was all the players' fault. My personal feeling is that the coaching staff and the manager should really have been watching out for which players were looking rather tired in preparation for the match. I think the game against Atletico Madrid took a considerable amount of energy out of our attacking players and midfielders, and for that reason, Maeda, Kyogo, and O'Reilly all may well have been quite a lot flatter against Hibs, and the performance was very reminiscent of a similar 0-0 draw against St Johnstone early in the season, where Celtic's players didn't turn up. For that reason, I did think that it would have been a good idea just to freshen up the team, rest a couple of our star players, such as Kyogo and Maeda, and give players such as O, Yang, or even Forrest a start, and allowing Kyogo and Maeda to maybe come on for the last 20 minutes or so, keep their fitness up, and also allowing us to have two real impact players off the bench. Personally, I'm not massively sure that having Forrest, Johnston and Turnbull coming off the bench is a good idea. I think it's no coincidence that it's 21 months since Michael Johnston played for Celtic. David Turnbull, his contract is up at the end of the season, and neither his agent nor Celtic seems to be looking to extend that contract, and thus neither of those two are really in Celtic's plans for me for the future. James Forrest has been playing in the first team for 14 years. He is actually only 32. I think a lot of people think he's actually older than he is. And so I think Forrest does have another couple of seasons of first team football, probably being the kind of player we play now and again as a starter, such as in Scottish Cup or League Cup match, coming off the bench sometimes as well. However, I think it's time that we gave many of our younger players a start and had on the bench players that should be part of Celtic's long-term future. Holm, Yang, Tilio, all young players. One could even look at maybe promoting someone like Rocco Vata from the B team Looking at the reports of Celtic's B team playing against Feyenoord, Lazio, and Atletico Madrid's um, similar teams. We lost the Feyenoord B team 3-0, drew 1-1 with Lazio's B team, and lost 2-0 against Atletico Madrid. However, Celtic's B team, which is almost exclusively 18, 19 years old and younger, all did a good job, coped well with playing against the corresponding teams from three big European powerhouses, and players such as Vata and Kars were well within their depth and not outplayed by their European counterparts. And so I think those players have got a future at Celtic and uh, could well be players to fit into the squad. I think what a lot of all other Celtic fans are forgetting is that there's a high potential in the January and first half of February. We could well be missing quite a number of our first team squad. There is the Asian Cup, which will very likely take Hatate, Kyogo, and Maeda away from us. 5, 6 matches up to mid February. Similarly, Yang and O are very much part of Jurgen Klinsmann's South Korean squad, and Marco Tilio also has been in and around the Australian squad. And although it's the Asian Cup, Australia participate in that as well. And thus, we could be looking at having three of our best players who are all very much first team, first choices, a couple of the backup players, and also Tilio, whose status at Celtic is quite uncertain at the moment, all being away. There is also rumours that Kwon and Kobayashi may be part of their country's squads for that tournament, where they're maybe going to be a bit more experimental in it. Also, there are some stories that the very top European clubs are trying to block their players being called up for the Asian Cup, and that may well open up the chance for players such as Kwon, Kobayashi to get into, or even Iwata to get into their international squads for the Asian Cup. Not clear at this stage whether Celtic have applied to UEFA and FIFA for any form of exemption to try and keep some of the players at Celtic in a key part of the season. But there is a potential for 5 or 6 games in early 2024 for Celtic to be very seriously depleted, which is why I think it's a good idea now to start blooding players, bring them through, giving the B team squad some chances in and around the first team. I think our full squad is more than strong enough to accommodate a few players gaining experience off the bench. And also, just looking at a few of the stats, a lot of people are very critical of O's performance. He has played 10 games this season. On only 2 occasions, he played more than 20 minutes. Hasn't made a single start this season. And a lot of his games have been single figure minutes coming on as a sub. And in such situations, very, very hard for him to get into the game and making an impact. And looking at O's career, he has played 30 times for Celtic, scored 7 goals, which is a reasonable output given the fact that he's only made 3 starts and 27 substitute appearances under Postecoglou and Rodgers. Yang yet to score for Celtic, 1 assist. He's made 4 starts and 7 substitute appearances for Celtic. He has shown a lot of flashes of good ability, good skills, has a lot of pace, which I think against Hibs would have been a very big factor down one side, getting behind and through the Hibs tight back 8. And so I think Yang would have been a good player either as a bench impact player or as a starter at the weekend. And I would be personally keen on Wednesday the game against St Mirren, and then the corresponding game at the weekend against Ross County, for us to give a few of the players such as O, Yang, Tilio, Holm, Iwata a start. Thought personally, Paulo Bernardo looked rather tired and out of sorts against Hibs, having had a very good performance in many ways against Atletico Madrid. Iwata came on against Hearts and did a grand job, so I think personally I would give Iwata a start on Wednesday, pushing McGregor and O'Reilly up further up. Maybe starting with O and Yang, and having Kyogo and Maeda come off the bench later in the match against St Mirren if required. Bit of a mystery as to why Odin Thiago Holmes seems to have dropped out of Brendan Rodgers' thoughts. I'd be surprised if it's any form of punishment for having got himself sent off against Feyenoord. Odin Thiago Holm has been heavily involved with the under-21 side for Norway on both international breaks. One of the other problems I think Celtic have with all their squad players and players who are primarily subs is that there is no real opportunity for B team, reserve team football to keep them up with their match fitness, which I think is a bit of a conundrum for Celtic, as it does mean that those players, when they are coming in for injuries, suspensions, or coming off the bench, are just lacking a little bit of match fitness. However, I do think it's very important, as is proven by all the biggest leagues and the biggest teams, that some team rotation is important. Rodgers is pretty much stuck with the same 11 week in, week out, apart from having to replace Hatate recently, and obviously replacing Joe Hart when Hart was suspended. But otherwise, Celtic have pretty much had the same 11 week in, week out ever since Lewis Palmer came to the side. I do think it would be an idea to give players a little bit of a rest, a bit of rotation, which keeps the squad players' fitness and match practice up, does give the star players a little bit of a rest. And that was very much a way that Postecoglou worked. O'Neill, Strachan, Jock Stein also did keep his backup players regularly involved in the side. And clearly, top English managers such as Klopp, Guardiola, Arteta, etc., Postecoglou at Spurs, do keep their first team fresh, keep the bench players fresh, keep everybody involved, and I do think that might well be an area that Brendan Rodgers could be looking at over the next few weeks, especially if there is the need in the early new year to replace several of our Asian players in the first team. A lot of people are comparing O with Giakoumakis. The big difference between O and Giakoumakis was Giakoumakis spent the first half of his first season with Celtic out injured. Then, in the second half of that season, when he started playing on a regular basis, Kyogo was injured for much of that time. Looking at the stats, over his period with Celtic, Giakoumakis made 15 starts and 25 substitute appearances, scoring 26 goals. And I think having those several starts in the team very much helped him become part of the team, get full match fitness, and also for a large part of that time with Celtic, he was starting instead of Kyogo, as Kyogo was injured, but on many occasions under Postecoglou, Giakoumakis made the start, Kyogo came off the bench, and then in the next match it was the other way around, Kyogo would start and Giakoumakis would come off the bench. Jurgen Klinsmann very much does think that O is going to be a potential superstar for South Korea, and thinks he is a very good striker, He's very much part of Klinsmann's squad, and has made some substitute appearances and was successful at all other South Korean international levels. And so I think he's very much a player that Celtic should persist with, but I do think Celtic have to buy a good top quality striker. It sounded like in the summer window we got very, very close to securing Matthias Kiesgarden, a very promising young Danish striker from Brøndby. It appeared that the transfer fee and the personal terms were all close to being completed, and then Brøndby got cold feet as they didn't want to lose one of their star players mid-season. Whether they're a little bit more accommodating in the winter transfer window, we shall see. But I think Kiesgarden or Sidney van Hooijdonk, playing in the Italian league, son of one of our ex-players, Pierre van Hooijdonk, I think both of those two would fit in exceedingly well at Celtic, and I think having the three-pronged options of O and Kiesgarden and Kyogo would be great. And also with O's greater physique, there is the possibility of having spells where you have two men up front, as occasionally happened with Kyogo and Giacomakis when Celtic played two up front when they were chasing the game under Postecoglou. Bit of a rambling, all over the place video today, but really it was just my thoughts, my opinions, in response to a few of the other pundits and articles and internet sites, etc. And feel free to pop your own comments and opinions in the comment section for this video. So I'm going to finish things off at that point there. Going to do an early morning video tomorrow in looking at the Celtic against St Mirren match more closely, with some predictions regarding the result and the team makeup, etc., and also looking at any news coming out of Celtic. The one bit of good news coming out of Celtic is Alistair Johnston seems to have fully recovered from the head knock he got against Hibs, and it would appear it was a very, it was more of a just taking things carefully and being very safe and precautionary for him to come off against Hibs. And it would appear within a short period he actually was completely back to normal, and by the end of the match in the dressing room he was entirely recovered, and so should be very much able to play against St Mirren on Wednesday. So for today, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe if you can. Do pass on the details of the channel to others. And so for today, goodbye and hail, hail.